Hello world, welcome back to Accelerate and welcome back to my Lexmoto ZSB 125, and today we're going to do a full review and I'm going to give you my opinions on what I think of one of the cheapest Chinese bikes you can buy. The ZSB is Lexmoto's entry-level, no-nonsense bike. This thing is an incredible retail price of $1,869 with 2 years parts and labour warranty, which I find absolutely insane. And this is what I meant when I said this is one of the cheapest Chinese bikes you can buy. I have gone into a bit more depth about the Lexmoto brand in a previous video. Now, I've had some dealings with a few Lexmoto dealers that I've also documented in a previous video, so I do highly recommend you go and check that out as well. This is the 2022 model, therefore falls under the Euro 5 bracket, which offers a few mandatory features. But first of all, I want to start with the styling. The body colours are offered in grey, or what we have here, this beautiful navy blue. The styling in general is very simplistic, sort of naked bike style, but done very well, with the addition of these panels, which I find sort of fatten the bike a bit more. Along with the swooping rear end, it does create sort of a unique side profile. The exhaust can on this is also a striking statement of the styling, and it is finished in chrome, which again goes very fitting with the rest of the style of the bike. Black alloy wheels are standard on these, which again just suits that style really well. The traditional big single headlight gives this bike a timeless look with the modern touches of the LED indicators, both front and rear. Also offered as standard is the LED brake lights and side light, as well as the indicators on the rear. Very easy to read, blue-faced tacho, or rev counted if you will. 10,000 RPM redline. Although in all honesty it doesn't quite seem to rev that high. I do love the initial gauge sweep when you turn the ignition on as well. That is awesome. We have in the bottom corner a digital fuel gauge, which does come in very handy. The ZSB actually comes with a gear indicator, which you can't really see here. I'll go into more when we get out on the road. But an indicator, gear indicator just there, which is very handy for beginners because it lets you know what gear you're in, and more importantly, if you are accidentally in neutral, which I found very helpful as a new rider, as this was my first bike. That is also aided by the illuminated neutral light as well, which is a bit of a pig to see when you're out on the road, but definitely handy there. And of course, you've got your mileage counter and your trip odometer just there as well, activated by that single push button there. Hand controls on the ZSB, very standard. You've got your kill switch just there. Ignition starter just underneath. Obviously the throttle, front brake is there. Now we do have the linked brake on this, which I'll go into more in a bit, thanks to the Euro 5. On the right hand side we've got your headlights, again thanks to the Euro 5. Anytime the ignition is on, safety feature, the headlights do come on, which again I think is a brilliant idea. It is not mandatory, but we've got your high beams just there, flash on the rear, and of course the horn at the bottom, and your indicators just there with the center punch to cancel. Another great thing about these bikes that I say not only makes this a great starter bike, but a great commuter bike. They come standard with the luggage rack that you can either strap any bags to, or you can easily get a top box on there. And although I've used this as my first bike, I have kept it around. I have actually passed my test and moved on, but I've been using this bike to commute as much as I can because I just thoroughly enjoy riding it. As you may have guessed, the 125 in the name does refer to the engine capacity being 125cc. Again, ideal for first bikes, particularly in the UK, as you are legally allowed to ride a 125cc once you've passed your CBT. Obviously a single piston, fuel injected, air-cooled engine that Lexmoto rates at 11.5 horsepower, which for me, coming from the car world, is just mind-boggling. But again, I'll talk more about the power and the power delivery when we get on the roads. That 11.5 horsepower is delivered at 9,000 RPM, Lexmoto states. It does have 9.6 Newton meters of torque, which is delivered at 8,000 RPM. That's right, you really do have to rev these things to get the most out of it. But as is so with the majority of 125s, great feature on this bike, it does have a manual kickstart. So if the battery ever goes dead, you'll never be stranded. You can manually kickstart it with that. Single branch exhaust manifold coming off the engine that houses the catalytic converter, thanks to the Euro 5 demands. The bike does have a pretty nice subdued tone for a 125cc. I've also got your oxygen sensor there, which is thanks to the Euro 5. But yeah, as I said, quite a nice tone for the 125, I would consider. Lexmoto rate the top speed of these bikes as 56 mile an hour, which is interesting because I'm going to be attempting a 0 to 60 run video using a draggy in a separate video. And although I know the speedometers are quite far out on these, as is with motorbikes, I am confident we can get it to the 60 mile an hour mark. So get subscribed and stay tuned for that, because that's going to be a laugh. Brake setter, we have a single brake disc up front and a single brake disc in the rear. They don't really need any more. These bikes are so light. Lexmoto rate them at 125 kilograms. Now I've got a 1200 Bandit, and the difference in weight when you're riding, when you're standing, is absolutely incredible. These things are so agile and so light. So the brakes on these are actually fantastic, even with the single disc front and rear. And again, thanks to the Euro 5, it does have linked braking, which basically, if you apply the rear brake, it also applies the front brake for added stability as well. So as I said, overall, the brakes are very good and very confidence-inspiring. Suspension-wise, we have twin shock absorbers on the rear, which aids in comfort, particularly when you're carrying passengers. I've actually covered a fair amount of distance on this with a passenger, which I will go into when we get out on the road. But even with the two of you, this is a very comfortable bike. Along with the big padded seats, it does offer a very comfortable riding experience. Gearbox, we have a 5-speed manual gearbox with your standard 1 down, 4 up configuration. The ZSB comes standard with a centre stand, which is great for storage. I use it all the time when parking in my garage to stop it leaning. But it makes it so much easier for maintenance, chain maintenance in particular, because the back wheel is off the ground. You can obviously rotate and get to the chain. Now, maintenance in general on these is incredibly easy because everything is accessible. You've got your plug there, you've got your inlet just there, you've got the exhaust, the O2 sensor. Dropping the oil is easy. You've got your oil indicator just there. These are probably one of the easiest bikes to maintain yourself if you are out of warranty. Stepping onto the bike, the seating position is incredibly low, so it will suit any rider. Now, I'm 5'9"-ish, and you will definitely, if you're anything around that height, you will definitely be flat-footed. And even to get on is very simple. Again, going back to my Bandit, you have got to really get your leg over to jump on, and the seating position is so comfy with this padded seat. Great reach from the handlebars, nice wide handlebars which give you confidence in the handling ability. The mirrors, I've heard a lot of people complain about bikes where the mirrors are not wide enough. These are absolutely perfect. You get fantastic view, great adjustments. But I think now, this is the fun part of the video, let's get it out on the road. You do have to pull the clutch when starting it up, and it will not start on the side stand. It has to be started on the centre stand. With the electronic fuel injection, you've always got that confidence that it's going to start every time. This bike has never let me down. I bought this bike on 92 miles. It's now done 1,900. So I've done almost 2,000 miles on this. And like I said, it's never let me down. Comparing it to my Bandit again, which is carved, you've always got that struggle of starting it up. But if you just want a bike that just starts and goes, I mean, this is the essence of a bike. This is what Lexmoto were going for. If you just want a bike and nothing else, this is the one you want. And like I said, I've kept it around for so long just because I just enjoy riding it. It's so cheap. Again, I'll get into fuel costs and stuff like that. This thing is ridiculous. But that's why it's still with us. I've been using this as much as I can as an excuse to commute, just to sort of keep it around. But this one will be going up for sale very soon. So if you are interested, drop me a line. But let's get out on the road, shall we? That electronic ignition is fantastic. Like I said, gives you confidence every time. So going into first gear, as I said, standard 5-speed gearbox. The engagement, the click is very satisfying, very assertive. You certainly know it's going into gear. And we're going to set off on these country roads first of all. So I mentioned comfort on this. As I said, I'm 5'9". The seat on this is so comfy. Now, I've only been on a few bikes, granted, but this is definitely one of the comfiest. I've done some very long journeys on this bike, a good 5-6 hour journey, and not once did I feel like I had to pull over because I was uncomfortable. The seating position, you're sat very upright, knees are up quite high as well, so you're sat forward, which is what I love on a commuter bike if you know you're going to be spending a long time. So let's address the elephant in the room. Now, on these country roads, sort of back roads, 11.5 horsepower, does not sound a lot, and let's face it, it's not a lot. But on these roads, particularly if you're using it for commuting and you're not on any motorways, it is more than enough. It certainly gets going. Yes, you have got to rev it, but as you saw me set off then, if you're sticking to normal speeds, it's not as if well, it's definitely enough power to keep up with modern traffic. And sat now, we're doing an indicated 50 mile an hour, sat at 6,000 RPM. It's not intrusive at all. That exhaust is nice and quiet. Considering it's a single cylinder engine, it's not too intrusive on the buttocks. You do get a few vibrations every now and then, but luckily not at the RPMs that you'll be cruising at. Now, these are some terrible roads, and the bumps, one of the things I love there, I just hit a hard bump there. One of the things I love about this, it's so comfortable. This thing is so light, you can just chuck it through corners, even on this wet day. Gives me confidence to have a little bit of fun. Not too much, but I mean... And the great thing is, you can rev each gear out, you can see 50 mile an hour, I am still not breaking the speed limit, and you're having a whale of a time. So on these back roads, this bike certainly makes sense. I just wish you can't convey just how light and throwable this bike is. Now, it is on Chinese tyres, obviously being a Chinese bike, but you can always upgrade. If I was keeping this bike, I probably would upgrade to some good old Michelins. You cannot go wrong with Michelin. But I keep saying a commuter bike, a learner bike. This, on these back roads now, I have a bike that has like 10 times the power of this in the garage, and this is still... I'm sure you guys would agree with me, there's something about driving a slow bike fast rather than a fast bike slow. You can wring each gear out on this. And in the Bandit, you can't do that. You've got to make sure you've got road ahead to take that acceleration. But this... So let's talk about performance. Like I said, I am going to do a 0 to 60 video. There isn't any 0 to 60 figures because apparently this will not hit 60. But I mean, full throttle here. You're not going fast, oh my god, it's just, it puts a smile on your face. And like I said, you can roll through, you know you're not breaking any laws, particularly on these national speed limit roads now. And you know you're doing fantastic miles per gallon. So let's talk about miles per gallon. I've owned this bike for a while now. As I said, I've put about 2,000 miles, and I've tried to record as much as I can every time I fuel up. Now, I've only ever run 99 octane fuel. I highly recommend Momentum. I know loads of people that use it, so that might help play a factor in there. Now, the best that I've done over a full tank of fuel, I kid you not, I physically worked it out, was 117 miles per gallon I was averaging. 117, which is bonkers, and it only costs, with premium fuel, about 12 to 13 pounds to fill to the brim. And that was driving very sensibly, but even so, I was averaging each tank, it was between 108 and 112 miles per gallon. Real world figures. That's not some computer trying to trick me, trying to make me think the bike is doing better than what it is. That is me physically working out how many miles per gallon I was getting. Road tax on this is £20 a year. So again, the reason I've kept this around is I've paid for the bike, I've paid for the tax, I've paid for the insurance. The insurance is ridiculously cheap. This is not really costing me anything, which is why I don't really want to let go of it. I'm pootling along now at an indicated 25. We are in a 20 mile an hour zone. Thank you, Drakeford. So the bike's not perfect. Now, I believe this is the same with any 125. The on and off throttle can be a bit jerky, particularly at lower RPM, at lower speed. It is one of those things you get used to as long as you learn to obviously use the clutch for control. And when you're doing these speeds, your miles per gallon once again is just absolutely ridiculous. So although I said there is an obvious sort of lack of power if you're used to bigger bikes, let's pull out of a busy junction. Not typical, there's no cars, but full throttle though, it is plenty to be keeping up with modern traffic. Dual carriageway style road. I'm doing 50 mile an hour, and as you can see, I'm in fifth. It is a bit windy today, but full throttle, it does climb. It does get there eventually. But again, cruising at these sort of speeds. Now, I haven't taken it on a motorway. I wouldn't feel too confident taking it onto a motorway just because of the lack of power and the lack of top speed. But I have, as I said previously, I've done a fair amount of distance on this with a passenger. And although you really have got to have your wits about you, because of the lack of the weight of the bike, when you add another person, you really notice the extra weight. And that's no offense to the person who's been on the back of my bike. I hope she doesn't take offense to this. But you really, again, I've had it on the Bandit as well, and the Bandit still gives you confidence, but the 125, this ZSB, is just something, it's perfectly doable, because we've had a few rides now on this with her on the back, and we've both enjoyed it, but as a rider, you've just got to be that bit more aware. I've come out to film this video, and I was going to stay local to my house, but I'm enjoying this so much because of the bad weather. Oh, actually saying that, that's a good point. I was about to say, I've braved the weather for you guys, hence why I've got my waterproofs on, but I have ridden this bike all year round in all weathers, to the point where I use this as an excuse. I commuted on this as much as I could back and forth to work, and on more than one occasion I got stuck in the rain, and once or twice was torrential rain. And although the thin Chinese tyres did make me a bit more careful going in and out of corners, I still felt confident riding in the rain. And the mad thing is, I was still in a good mood the whole time I was riding, even in that torrential rain. And I mean, just coming into corner, it's so agile. You can really throw this thing around. You can get a good lean on. I've actually caught the pegs a couple of times, which makes you feel like a right hero, let me tell you, on something like this. And like I said, I'm on a dual carriageway now. I am keeping up with traffic. Yes, you have got to rev it out to get the power at a constant speed. Now, like I said, it will happily cruise at 50-55 unless you get elevation. Once there's an elevation, because of the lack of torque, I do find myself using full throttle quite a lot, and particularly on a day like today on an open road. I'm lucky here because there's trees. When the wind hits you and you feel it because of the lack of weight. Although it benefits you in every other area, when the wind hits you, you do sort of get that bit of a shake. Again, as long as you're aware, it's nothing. I mean, as a new rider, it can be quite scary, but as long as you're aware of it, it is fine. So that is my conclusion and my review of the Lexmoto ZSB, one of the best sort of all-round smaller bikes I think that money can buy at the moment. Whether it's a first starter bike, which I have experience with, cannot recommend it enough. But like I said, I've kept it around for a commuter bike, and because of the fuel economy, the running cost, it just makes sense to keep it around, and you could not want a cheaper bike just sat there just to poodle around on. As I've said, the main down point is, if you wanted to point it out, is the lack of power, but then with that comes the amazing fuel economy. So for me, that's a worthy sacrifice. Let's face it, you don't buy a 125 to set lap records. So in conclusion, I highly recommend this bike. And to be honest, I'm going to be quite sad to see it go because I am getting rid of it soon. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Boom.